Probably be a cozy group tonight, let's put it that way, because this is not a topic that a lot of people are maybe that familiar with or interested in. Do we want to turn out the lights or no? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
You want to check? We can do the first two.
Yeah, okay. Alrighty. So what I wanted to start with is we're talking about genealogy journals, and I'd like to know how many of you have used genealogy journals. Well, you don't. All right, so online. Well, that, you know, it works. It's fine. And I guess the other part of that is, are your families primarily Massachusetts families? Not necessarily, maybe?
One side, yes. The
One
day
side.
Day side, definitely.
This side.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, and if you would advance this is me, and this is MassHog. And MassHog is the publication of the Massachusetts Society of Genealogists. And I brought with me, actually I brought, these are my copies, and so I figured there would be a relatively small group of people, but you can look these over. And when you're done, just put them back on the
Thank you.
chair here, and so you have a sense of what they look like. Needless to say, you would think that almost everything in here would be referring to people in Massachusetts. And the same thing with other places, other journals and other places in the country. One thing to be aware of is that, of course, people did a lot of moving around. When they did the moving around, they may have moved from Massachusetts to Oregon or California or whatever. So when you look for journal articles about Massachusetts people, you may find them in places you wouldn't expect. So it's one of many reasons to use the wonderful tool called Percy, which is available to you through the library. And we'll be talking about that later, but I just wanted to mention that to you, that things aren't always what they seem. They aren't always where you think you're going to find them. But this is the journal for Massachusetts, and it's a more general journal in the sense that you can be from any place in Massachusetts, as opposed to some of the others, and I'm going to ask you to advance that a little. First off, I wanted to thank George Martin, who has just celebrated his 19th year as the editor of MassHog. I also wanted to show you that this is part of what the journals collection at the Worcester Public Library looks like. I want you to be aware that a lot of the journals that I will be showing you are at Worcester Public. However, there's a ton of things at the American Antiquarian Society. They have just a raft of things from a variety of different places. So that's a really good resource, and you can check on their online catalog to see what journals they have. But before that, you're going to identify the journals that you would need. So, because at Worcester Public, everything is on the are on accessible shelving, meaning that you can go ahead and pull out what you need and then they can reshelve it later. I'm showing you part of this collection. At the American Antiquarian Society, you have to make a request. They will go get it for you, but there's a lot of material there. So this is where we are at this point. There are plenty of other places around, and on that green sheet that I have handed out, there is a list of other libraries that may be helpful to you. So I'd keep that in mind. Now, if you will take a look at this, all right, what are they and who publishes them? Journals by and large are published by genealogical societies, and they can be highly specialized. For example, there are a goodly number that are focused just on Mayflower descendants and all of those folks. Early immigrants from England, maybe other places as well, but those initial immigrants who came to this country. And the first slide I'm going to show you is called Mayflower Quarterly, and there's another one called Mayflower Descendants. So if you have people that are connected with the Mayflower, these may be interesting to you, or not. Depends on how far you've gotten and how your documentation has gone. Following this, you can see the Essex Genealogy. This is, or genealogist, this is the Essex Genealogical Society, and it's for Essex County, Massachusetts. There's also the New England Quarterly, which covers all of New England. So there are things that are specifically genealogical. There are things that are historical. They could be literary. They could mention diaries. And these may be things that you are maybe unaware of in terms of members of your family that may have, maybe someone had access to a diary that you have not. And so that could be helpful as well. The other,
There it goes, sorry.
yeah, that's okay. For each of the New England states, and actually for each of the states in the United States, there are specific journals. Now this is just 2 from Connecticut. There are others as well. So you can see that people have been working on Irish place names, on tombstones, all kinds of various things that could be useful. So I'm more in, I want you to be encouraged to look at what is available, because you can never tell what you're going to find. And you may find things, as always, in weird places. So we have the next one that is Vermont. Generally, the journal, which is a little bit more sophisticated, is going to have publications that are more complex. They're going to be talking about sources that maybe you wouldn't have used normally. So that is something to keep in mind. Smaller, now this is called a bulletin of the Genealogical Society of Vermont. So it's going to give you maybe smaller bits of information, shorter articles, that sort of thing. So be aware of that as well. These are, well, from the Midwest. This is from the South Cook County in Illinois. The Deep South Genealogical Quarterly is really superb, because you can find a tremendous amount of information about the early settlers in the Deep South. That is going to be Alabama, Mississippi, maybe Florida. You never can tell what you're going to find in that one. They have published wonderful, they have wonderful publications that have indexed individual documents from the Deep South, and those are available in larger collections. So these are yet more clues. All right, these are 2 publications from Indiana. Who's a Genealogist is a really hefty journal. And I'll show you what that looks like. You can take a look at this. And I have with me a couple of copies of County Lines. County Lines is, there you go. County Lines is a newsletter. And it's from a small county in southwestern Indiana. The value of dealing with various groups. Palatine immigrants, these are the folks that came to the United States in the 1700s and following, when you had people that were basically from the Rhineland in Germany, and they immigrated. So there's a lot of folks that have done research in this area and continue to do that. Rodzini, we have a lot of Polish background folks in western Massachusetts, central Massachusetts, Connecticut. This is a really nice publication. There's a genealogical society that is focused on Polish backgrounds. There is also, these are all French-Canadian folks. Connection is put together by a group in Quebec. The others are, this is Je me souviens, the second one in from the right. And that one is published in Rhode Island. Connecticut Maple Leaf is obviously Connecticut. American Canadian is New Hampshire. So there's a lot of publications on French Canada. So if you have a French Canadian background, these would be things to try. There's just a lot of other information too. Journal of African American Historical and Genealogical Society is a newer society, but they're doing a lot of publishing. They're having a lot of conferences. There's a lot of material becoming available and people using more of it. Avutenu is a Jewish genealogical society. There are certainly societies of other religious denominations. So there is such a wealth of information that is really, really useful. There's, in addition, this is Crossroads. This is primarily Mormon. It's the Utah Genealogical Society. But, and if you want to go to any of the wonderful conferences that are held, they're usually once a year in the winter. It's called SLIG, Salt Lake City Institute for Genealogy. It's put on by the Utah Genealogical Society. They do a wonderful, wonderful job of having these conferences that have different foci. In other words, it's improving your skills. It's also researching specific areas, and they do a lot of tremendous amount of work. So, take a look at these and see what you can, just glance at. I think I tend to be a type of person who, you can tell me about something, but I want to handle it. I want to take a look at it. I want to see what it's like. Also, it's a situation where I feel it's useful before you subscribe to anything to see what the publications look like. Will they be helpful to me? Should I subscribe to it? Is it something that's worth doing? So just to be aware of the breadth of materials that there is available. This Sarah Journal is the Swedish Ancestry Research Group. There's a lot of Swedish folks in this area, as you know. There's a Cornwall Family History Society, which I was not that aware of. There's certainly a lot of English folks with English backgrounds. So, I was mentioning before the differences in publication and the type of information that is published. Articles in journals tend to be longer. They deal with more complex questions. They illustrate how to use specialized records, and I've been seeing, and you might see it in the NGS Quarterly that I've passed over here to look at, that people are using DNA results and citing those, which I had not seen before. So there's a lot of changes. Publications, both printed and online, focus on how-tos and include documents recently discovered or digitized. One of the many things that is available is something like Eastmans. Are most of you familiar with Eastmans? No? Okay. 1, it's free. 2, it's daily. This would be, Dick Eastman lives in this area. He speaks at a lot of conventions and a lot of meetings and that sort of thing. At any rate, so he publishes things daily. That is free. If you really want to see his articles, then you can pay for the upgraded edition, which is called the Plus edition. He's a really useful, he publishes a useful newsletter in that it keeps you abreast of all of the changes that are going on in genealogy. And there's a lot of them, all the time. So it's something to be aware of. It's easy to find online. You can subscribe to it. To the easy, no, back that up. You can splice to the cheap edition if you'd like to, and try it out and see what you think. And I think, again, that's really useful. There's another one that is, there's a couple that are weekly. One of these, and this is put out by the Jewish Genealogical Group that publishes Avotenu, which is the journal, and they also publish a lot of very impressive research material that is lots of basic reference books that have been including a lot of European records, that sort of thing. But this is Gary Makatoff, and, excuse me, Makatoff. Aside from things that are specific to Jewish families, you see that there's a lot of other things in here, like a new website identifies victims of disasters. Well, heck, there's a disaster a day. You could,
somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. And it could be exceptionally useful. You just never know, again, what you're going to find. He also publishes, and so does Eastman, the Family Search editions. Family Search publishes or puts out for publication a list of all of the information that is available or they have made available during that week. They have people doing a lot of transcriptions in multiple languages. I mean, fabulous stuff. I was talking to this gentleman before when I was here the last time, and we had a person here who was looking for a Belgian relative, and with 2 weeks before I was here, I had read something that said that that Family Search had put up Belgian records. Margaret looked it up online, and bingo. I mean, it doesn't happen that way all the time, but this happened to be a really useful thing to know about. And you can, of course, you can always go to Family Search, but sometimes you just happen to hit it, that this is the right thing at the right time. So, this is a weekly. The next one is the Weekly Genealogy that's put out by NEHGS, which is in Boston. And they have a lot of interesting information there too. This is a freebie. You don't have to belong to HisGen. It's useful if you have New England ancestors. However, they are also expanding their collections to include more and more parts of the United States. And also colonies in the Caribbean. They've had information on the British Islands, and there's a lot of folks that are looking for that type of information, and you never know what you're going to find as usual, but I know that they have had published some information on those as well, and that's always helpful. I worked as a librarian for a lengthy period of time, and you're always looking for something that's going to help someone come in with a question you don't anticipate. So it's always nice to know that there's something out there so that you can help everybody, hopefully. So, next one, please. These are, the forum is the middle publication for the Federation of Genealogical Societies. It's a different group than the NGS. Again, you can subscribe to that separately. It gives, again, more information. If you have the idea that there is more information out there than you can possibly absorb, you're right. It's just really tough. This is Family Tree Magazine, and I like the way that they present things. I think for a lot of folks, if you're just starting out, or even if you're not, if you've been doing things for a long time, you will find things explained here in a very easy to understand method. Plus, I like the format of the magazine that you can subscribe to for, I think it's something like $25 for a year, and I think they're monthly. Genealogical computing, again, it depends on your interest. There's a lot of material out there, and it's one of many things that it might be useful for you to just look at what's available locally. I mean, make a trip, maybe as a group, to some of the local libraries, and see what is going to help you the most. Now, where can you find these publications? As I mentioned, the filming I did was at Worcester Public, and some of these were my own stuff. I didn't go to the American Antiquarian Society because you would have to go to the basement, and they don't usually like taking you down there. But at any rate, it's I would give that a shot. On your green pieces of paper, you have a list of different libraries. And if you belong to an organization, the publications are often included in your membership. Sometimes you will get all of the publications. Sometimes you just want one of them. So it depends on what you decide to do. If you want to join a group, that could be tremendously helpful to you, or not. It depends on how much you know. But it might be worthwhile to know more about the organizations and what they do publish. Public and private libraries have special collections, and that's tremendously useful. Also, the colleges and universities, local historical societies may have information, have publications like these that I've shown you. But how do you find the type of information that you're looking for, and what type of index? Here we have, at the Jacob Edwards Library, Percy. And it's part of the online databases that were purchased last year, correct? Margaret, I think it was last year that you purchased Heritage Quest and Ancestry?
We only have Ancestry. I don't know.
Right, but I mean, but Percy was part of that. Heritage Quest and Ancestry were purchased as a group.
I guess, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I just don't, I
okay.
haven't actually looked at it. So
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
All right. The value in Percy is that it is put together by the folks at the Allen County Public Library, which is the largest public library, genealogical collection in a public library in the United States. So they have indexed everything from genealogy collections or genealogy journals to historical journals from 1800 to the present. Now, the local one, the Percy that you have here, and if you could advance that, this is what it looks like. They changed the look of it, so it's going to look a little different than normally you would have seen last year. You can get the census records. There's a lot of other things here, but you can also get Percy. And for this particular topic, this is a fabulous, really a fabulous plus. So you can search. Now they're calling this Cruzi Archive. It is available. It covers materials from 1800 to 2009. So you can come in here and search your little heart out. You can look for people, you can look for places, you can look to how to look for specific things, and you can look for lists of journals, the periodicals. So if you're looking for someone that may be from Longmeadow or whatever, you can try looking in these indexes and see what you come up with. So this is certainly accessible to you. This is what the place index looks like, and they're pretty much the same in the sense of the way they have it set up. What they will give you with these is they will give you citations to the specific journals and the specific title that you would need and who wrote it. So some of those are easily accessible. So if you have a card to a library, like this one, that has Ancestry Library Edition, you have access to Percy, and that's really, really wonderful. You can do the same thing at any library that does have access to those databases. Now, if you are looking for material from 2009 to the present, you would have to subscribe separately to Find My Past. That is a database that tends to be focused on British and Irish documents, including newspapers. They're including newspapers from the United States. It's not as robust as some of the other collections in terms of access to U.S. newspapers, but this might be of use to you. I would do the free one first and make sure that you find everything that you need to find or can find with that first. If you want to get the updated Percy, you would need to purchase Find My Past. However, if you belong to or have joined MASSOG, that is Mass Society of Genealogists, you get a 50% discount on Find My Past. So it can save you a fair amount of money. One other thing I'd like to mention to you is JSTOR, and I don't know how many of you have heard of JSTOR. It is an index to more sophisticated, more academic publications. The value of this is that these publications can focus on things that would not just flesh out your family's background, but because of the types of things that the students and professors are checking on or interested in, like 19th century Boston, you might be able to find things that really explain a lot of things. For example, I was helping someone find information on their family, which were German. They arrived in this country in the mid-1800s in New York and then moved to Boston, where they opened a hotel, sort of a boarding house, really. And she made the assumption that these guys were rich. Well, they weren't. And not only that, they went out of business, and I found the will, and the father left one of the sons $10. She was appalled. I mean, we're talking seriously appalled, until I was doing some searching on JSTOR and found an article dealing with boarding houses in Boston in the latter part of the 19th century, which really explained what happened to the economy at this point in time. There was another situation that I was helping someone with comparatively recently, and it had to do with the Rock Island, Illinois arsenal in Rock Island, Illinois, but it's in that the Quad City area, so it's Davenport, Iowa, and Illinois, and other cities around. And they were trying to figure out why a person would have been called a certain name. There were strikes going on in the arsenal because of the way the machinists were being treated by the military people that were in charge of the arsenal. And the person in her family was president of the Arsenal Aid Association, so that these were helping the folks that were really in trouble when the family went on, the gentleman went on strike. So, clues that help sort out the background here can be found with JSTOR. It is a wonderful index. You can usually get it at colleges. They have a complete one, but there is a daily and a weekly JSTOR that I believe is free. And it's tremendously useful. So it's again, another thing to be aware of. So I would like to encourage you to take a look at what is out there in terms of unusual publications that are specific to the families that you're researching, that sort of thing. I think that there's a lot of information that you may be able to glean from these. It's definitely worth your while to check out what is there. You don't necessarily have to buy them. If you go to one of the libraries that has a subscription to it, you can wait until the next month when it comes in. But I definitely would start with Percy, see what you can find, try a variety of different types of search terms that may have applied to your families. Some of those search terms may be a little difficult. You need to play some more, but it's tremendously useful. And I would just encourage you to do that because it will get your research one step closer to finding out more about your family, it may even, if you have brick walls, you may even break some of those down. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank Charlene and the MASOG for sponsoring this talk this evening. It's really a great pleasure to feel that we're so connected to all these genealogists across the
Well,
state.
it's, you know, it's useful to give people as many clues as is possible. I mean, we all can use the word clues. You never know what you're gonna find,
I
so.
think it's
It
really
makes me more
helpful for us.
And
curious,
good.
too. It makes me more curious. I wanna
Sure.
Find out more.
Absolutely, absolutely, and
I have a question. The
Sure.
JSTOR and the Percy, do they have access to foreign language publications as well?
Percy, I think that's a really good question.
Well, I kind of.
No, let me think about that for a while. I think that Percy tends to be, yep. Percy tends to be US, but it may include British ones as well. I haven't searched for one recently.
Well, the reason why I ask is because my ancestors are from Italy, and I've done some searches while I was traveling in Italy, and I was able to come up with a lot of publications in Italian.
Yeah, I'll bet.
That was quite useful for my family tree. But I'm just wondering, now back in the States, is it possible to access these publications using these other networks, or is there a way to?
All right,
The
I think that there
subscribing
are.
can
I
be
think-
very expensive when it's an overseas subscription.
Yeah, it could very well be. On the other hand, there's a couple of things that I will mention to you that I would try. My family tends to be German. So if you try, geez, what's blanking here? When you're going into international newspapers, you can search for those online. There is if you did a search on digitized newspapers, and just go to digitized newspapers, Italy.
Okay. Very general, yeah.
Yeah, you could certainly find those. There's a lot of stuff out there, and they're available online. Because I was looking for similar things having to do with other countries, including Poland.
It must be easier now, because when I had done this search, this was kind of before the advent of the internet. I mean,
Oh my God.
the internet was available,
Yeah, but
to
it
professors,
really
but
wasn't that
I couldn't,
extensive.
go into any library and check.
No.
Wasn't it something?
Certainly not. The other thing is that, do you know the Italian genealogy group that's in New York City?
All I know are the Sons of Italy. I don't know any others.
No, the Sons of Italy are a social organization. The Italian genealogy group, these guys have done a huge, huge amount of work of indexing births, deaths, and marriages in New York City, especially making those accessible. I think there are a couple of Italian genealogy groups around this area that might be of value to you, that could really help with that. The other thing is that, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Wikipedia in the United States is sort of looked down upon. Wikipedia in other countries is a whole other ballgame. I've tried that for Germany and Poland. I would try it for Italy, because I would bet that you could come up with, I look under Wikipedia Italy genealogy, but you'd probably want the specific area of Italy that your family is from,
Okay.
which is,
Anne Salerno. It's in Campania. It's
okay,
one of the
I
central
think, I would
provinces.
imagine that there's a bunch of,
It's possible to search by province once. you
yeah,
get into it.
yeah, once you get in there. I think that would make a big, big difference. I'd certainly try that and see how that goes. I'd also get in touch with that Italian Genealogy Society, which is in New York, and they're just amazing. So they would have much more knowledge, certainly, than I do. The other thing too is that you might talk to, I'm trying to think of any colleges in the area that have Italian departments. You know, where not just that they're teaching,
Not teaching just the language, but
just,
also
yes, but they're
history,
teaching history and,
Italian culture. pretty much.
yeah, and I think that there are great possibilities for that. I think it makes a big difference. The other thing too is you might find stuff like that at Boston Public. Entirely possible. I'm trying to think of cities that have large Italian populations, certainly Boston.
Well, that would be Boston, New York, Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Most
right.
most main American cities have.
Right, but what I'm thinking about also is, I'm wondering if, now we know that there are a lot of Portuguese and a lot of other fishermen.
Yep.
So you're going to have Italian communities, maybe New Bedford,
Mhm.
Fall River. They may have a lot more publications in those areas. I would try those libraries and see what they have. I know that there's been some research done here by one of the professors at Holy Cross. They did a cross-section of the Italian community in Worcester and stuff like that.
Well, there's more Italian Americans than there are Italians, believe it or not. So,
Yeah, I could believe that. I could easily believe that. And a lot of people that came over then went back, and then they came back again, which we
And I
found
brought
out.
cousins the next time. And for Italian Americans, your fifth cousin is the same as your first cousin. They
Why is that?
I think it's about community. It's something, safety in numbers. It could be
Could be.
It could be a number of things.
Interesting.
Yeah,
As I was growing up, I was kind of fascinated with that because
I would imagine that's very fascinating.
to know my fourth and fifth cousins, and we would meet them like we would our regular cousins.
Wow.
Just-
Margaret Fortier, Fortier, is an Italian genealogy specialist in this area. You may want to talk to her.
Okay.
She's a MassOg vice president, and I would certainly, you know,
It's a good place to start.
it's a really good place to start. She does give talks too on Italian genealogy, so there's a lot of people that specialize,
Sure.
so.
And I'm sure a lot of them have been doing it for most of their lives, so they probably
Maybe.
are experts at it.
Yeah, well, I don't think that they're not expert at it. What I'm saying is, I don't know when they actually started. Some people start late. Some people start, like Josh Taylor, who you see on Genealogy Roadshow. He was in his, I think he was something like 12.
Wow.
But his grandparents
It's a
were,
curiosity, then it's a fascination, and then after that, it just
It's an
gets out-
obsession,
It gets
yes.
out of hand, yeah.
yeah, well, absolutely. But the point is that you have access to folks with skills,
Right.
and they can really help you. And, you know, it's also, it's learning the, not to waste your time by searching the wrong way.
Yeah.
Meaning,
Working smarter, not harder.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And the other thing too is that, have you used Family Search with Italian?
Actually, I haven't done much, since I came back to the States, I really haven't done much
You
in the
did?
area. But I just,
They have done a heck of a lot of
I know.
transcription of Italian documents. Huge amount of work. Every week, I'd say, they have been posting more online, which
The
is
thing
really.
now there's more, I'm more inspired now because the aunts and uncles are starting to die off.
Oh, yeah.
They're getting into their 80s now, and
Yep.
it's just a process, and pretty soon,
Yep.
it'll be my generation, it'll be up to us to really, to perpetuate the memory of the family.
Well, it's true, but the other thing is start, how shall I say, debriefing
Yeah.
the people that may have been the original immigrants. They may not have been. I mean, you never know. I mean, it varies from family to family. And get what you can from them, because there's things that they will tell you that you may not be able to, that have not been written down or recorded.
Oh, yeah,
anyway.
I'm sure of it.
You know.
I would bank on it.
Yes, put money on there,
Yeah.
invite them over for dinner. make sure you cook it right, because it'll tell you if you didn't. But really, get out that tape recorder or whatever you're using now and write down the series of questions that you really want to have answered. Because that's really, really important. I mean, we've all missed the boat with somebody.
Well,
I have.
Some ethnic groups are better than others when it comes to keeping records.
That is true, but
It
some.
seems like the Italians are not one of them, though. They're, because of their history, because of all the feuds that they had in Italy over the centuries, there was a lot of disturbance in the bloodlines.
Well, that, I don't know a whole lot about that. I would imagine that it varies from area to area.
Oh, I'm sure of it.
I mean, just a huge amount of material. And the other thing too is that at one point I was transcribing they were northern Italian Monza. There was a cathedral chapter of Monza that obviously was Catholic and obviously was religious, and so these monks kept enormous records. They were in the late 1960s. They were filming them for the first time. I mean, we talk about digitizing as if it's like nothing. Well, it's compared to what you had these tremendous collections, and if they were still around at that time, you better get those things microfilmed.
Sure.
And of course, the major example for that was Monte Cassino, which by the time I was a graduate student in medieval history, they had more people focusing on trying to reconstruct documents from Monte Cassino, but that stuff had been decimated.
Sure.
It was bombed to smithereens.
Ceased to exist.
Hmm?
It ceased to exist.
Indeed, indeed. But I mean,
That's just in recent times, in recent history.
Yes,
When
and
you
we-
think about all the blood feuds over the centuries,
I'd really not, I'm not
Well, I
really
mean,
keen to,
it's-
but you know what I'm saying. It's just
it's tough for record keeping when a town is burned to the ground.
Right.
yeah, it's a bugger, and you don't have any firefighters and all that stuff. And if you did, you couldn't freeze dry the
That's
documents.
true.
I mean,
Unfortunately, though, it's still happening. I mean, you see what happens in like the eastern countries there.
Oh, yeah.
There's been archives just
Destroyed.
ancient civilizations.
Almost like the
gone,
invaders
just
are trying to
like
destroy their entire culture
Yeah,
from the
that's
ground up.
terrible, yeah. I
well,
can't-
Timbuktu.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, that had been the focus, I believe, of UNESCO. They were trying to preserve
Right,
all
yeah.
of the documents
The
that
cultural
were
significant
yeah,
documents.
Yeah, there's clearly that happened. So,
It's
but
happening.
even at Cologne, Germany, where they had this phenomenal archive, they had a lot of rain and the ground collapsed, and the whole archive.
Oh, gee.
I mean, that was not, how long ago was that?
It's a few years.
Yeah, not that long ago. So everything is vulnerable.
And to consider all those documents survived all those centuries,
And then
and
completely,
then to be
Yeah.
destroyed in
Yeah.
modern times, yeah.
Yeah.
what
It's
can you
almost
say?
sad, it's almost, yeah.
It is.
a
Well, it's
sin.
because we all take things for granted. Well, we'll do it next year.
Right.
We'll take care of this next year.
Well, life gets in the way, and often.
That's really true, and I
Yeah,
prefer that it
I
didn't.
really find that, I mean, it's nice to know what happened 100 years ago, but sometimes what happens tomorrow is more important. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any comments now that Charlene is here? If you had any questions, she might be able to throw some light.
Or not, I'd be happy to give it a shot anytime. Any questions? Any other
Are
questions?
there any MASOG events coming up that people
Yes.
would be welcome
Oh.
to go to, or,
You-
like for the uninitiated, so that somebody could get their toes wet, so to speak?
Okay, there's, the Worcester chapter has a meeting on the 10th and it's gonna be on land records.
Okay.
And you can, it's at Zion Lutheran Church in Worcester, Whitmarsh Avenue. It is worth it if you want to start with land records. They are very, very important because this is how you, it isn't just owning of the property, it's the names that are given there. And if you have a family where there are many daughters and they have married, very often they're mentioned in the wills and or the land records, where they're transferring a piece of property to somebody for $1, or they're giving it to you, you know they're related some way. Yeah, so, I mean, there's a huge amount of information that is out there that you can use some of these things to uncover. If you go to the MASOG website, it's Mass Society of Genealogy website, you can go to any of the meetings. Most people charge like maybe $3 if you're not a member. If you're a member, you pay $25 a year and you can go to wherever you want to go. And that's more than fine. But everybody has it at different times. There's 5 different chapters for MASOG. But there's also a bunch of other, if you have, I'm trying to think of, there's a Central Mass Genealogical Society that is in Gardner. There are a slew of French-Canadian groups. JGSGV, which is Jewish, and it's in Boston. There's a Western chapter of, they're not part of MASOG, but it's a Western Mass Genealogical Society. There's just a lot of places around. There, if you have anything dealing with Irish folks in your background, there's Tierra, which they're fabulous. They really, I mean, just lots of stuff, lots of archives. There's a variety of different types of collections around.
And for Mayflower?
Yeah, there's plenty for Mayflower.
I'm sure.
They have Mayflowers up and down the
Right.
coast there.
Yeah.
There's the Mayflower Society, there's a DAR, there's,
Right.
there's a lot of those. You might just search under Massachusetts Genealogical Societies and,
They're everyone, yeah.
yeah, that might
And
be.
if it's German, that would be different.
Well, you're not gonna find anything here.
No.
There's a few in New York, and everybody else is in the Midwest.
We're in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, yeah.
That's
We're
right.
mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's very, very true. If you're doing any research in New Jersey, I was doing some research in New Jersey, I mean, they collect a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that didn't get saved.
Wow.
They don't have all of the census and all that stuff, and it's really
It's too bad.
difficult. So, lots out there.
Mm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
for so
Nice job.
My pleasure.
And thanks
Good to
Beth
see
as
you all.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you.